Scott Arneal, he was the head coach of the Moose too, and I was going back, and I remember him saying to me, it's like, Glenny, like, anyone can run a drill. You have to actually teach the skill if you want to set yourself up as a skills coach. And that always resonated with me. Like, I can't just run a drill, right? You have to, there has to be teaching to it. There has to be a purpose to it. And the expertise I have is that ability to pick 3 things that I want to see in a drill and then hammer that home. It's like, if that's not there, we're stopping the drill and we're doing it till you get it. There might be other things that are missing, but we're going to worry about that later.
That was longtime skills coach Glenn Carnegie, and you are listening to the Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podollan. Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podollan, where we deconstruct the NHL journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podollan, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 NHL games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hello there, and welcome back, or welcome to the Up My Hockey podcast with Jason Podollan. I am your host, Jason Podollan, and we are here for episode, I'm going to get this wrong, I think it's 132 or 133. I didn't check the notes before I pressed record here, but we're into the 130s, I know that, and I know that you are going to like this podcast. If you are into getting better, if you are into improving your game on the ice, who better to listen to than someone who has been teaching it at the highest level for over a decade now. Glenn Carnegie hails from Winnipeg, Manitoba, and got his start in the skills coaching spectrum with the Manitoba Moose. So started as a really interesting story, actually. Started with gyms and the strength area, strength and conditioning area, and then moved into skill development. In researching the episode, I looked up Glenn, and I just automatically assumed that he would have had some type of, pro or higher pro hockey experience as a skills coach, and he didn't. He did play hockey, and he did play overseas. He said it just wasn't showing in Hockey DB. Did play a little bit of minor or lower level pro in Europe. But then got this job with the Manitoba Moose, was around the game, obviously knows the game well enough to teach it, was a student of it, and started working with the Moose. And then as the Moose became affiliated with Vancouver, he got moved up to Vancouver with the coaching staff that got hired. There was a good relationship there, and then he became the Vancouver Canucks on the ice guy and grew his role there, being there for over 11 years at the highest league in the world, teaching skill to the best players in the world. And really enjoyed the conversation. I mean, he's super honest about let's call it a humble start, which I think is great, because how he approaches his own craft of how to make people better is how he approaches his own life, about how he made himself better and how he got prepared for these NHL players and how he got prepared for playing or teaching AHL players, and provide value to them and to do the job the best that he could. And I think for me, how you do one thing is how you can do anything. And I do 100% believe in that philosophy. And it's one of the things that I do when I'm working with the athletes I'm working with it as well, is like, what is the process to getting better? And Glenn applied that to his own craft, which then he shows by example to those who he's working with, and he's also able to deliver a product on the ice. And we get into it. We get into all things skill development. We get into his philosophy. We get into some of the superstars that he worked with that showed some great gains. We get into some of the things that he likes to teach and some of the programs that he likes to do. We get into the intricacies of how he worked with Vancouver Canuck players and what those what the areas looked like and the time spent with them and these types of things. And yeah, we just have a good old-fashioned hockey conversation. Glenn lives down the road from me, about 45 minutes to an hour. we've definitely heard of each other before, but we'd never had the opportunity to meet or have a conversation. So it was fun to get on a call with Glenn and just talk hockey. We have a lot of similar philosophies, especially when it comes to skill development. I do skill development work here in Vernon, and we kind of geek out a little bit on skating for a while, and like the foundational, fundamental pieces of skating, and how people, parents, even players, they want to have these elaborate, or maybe thinks it's better to have these elaborate types of drills. And these progressions that accelerate really fast, when in all actuality, when you get the basics down and you work and continue to work on these basics, the fundamentals, that is the thing that allows you to grow these games. So not getting in a rush. I totally think about the story that a previous guest told when he went to watch Kobe Bryant train at 4:30 in the morning. And if you guys aren't Kobe Bryant fans, maybe you don't know about his work ethic and his practice habits, but he was widely respected for kind of being a guy that worked harder than anyone else. He believed if you got up at 4 a.m. and had a workout before everyone was up, then he gets 2 extra workouts or an extra workout in a day, and he would be doing 3 to 4 workouts a day in the off season compared to everyone else's maybe 1 or 2. And he was playing the long game. That the more effort that you put in over a longer period of time, the higher your window and the higher your trajectory. But the sports psychologist actually he was not a sports psychologist, but he was a trainer, went to go watch Kobe practice at 4:30 in the morning. At the time, he was the best player in the world. And he said for an hour, he watched Kobe do the most fundamental, basic dribbling patterns that he could believe. And I was just kind of blown away by the basicness of what this guy was doing. And when he talked to him, Kobe said, that's where the magic is. You have to master the fundamentals. No matter how good you are, you need to still keep working on them. So how does that apply to hockey? Well, inside edge drills, outside edge drills, pivot drills, skating drills, stride drills. These things don't go out of style. The question is, do you have the mental toughness to be able to find value in that and be willing to do that? And how does that parlay into the skill coach aspect? Is, do you have enough belief in yourself and what you're doing that you're not trying to jump into these fast progressions, these really dynamic, multi-layered drills, thinking that this is now I'm the shiniest new penny as the skills coach, instead of dealing with what is right in front of you and working on those fundamentals. So really enjoyed that aspect of the conversation. There's a lot in here. I mean, I enjoy most of these conversations, of course, or else I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. But this was a real fun one. It was nice to chat with someone like Glenn, who's really approachable, super humble. He's a straight shooter, and gives you an answer to the question. So I'll pass you off to our conversation with Glenn Carnegie, the skills coach of the Vancouver Canucks for 11 years, currently the skills coach of the Kelowna Rockets of the WHL, and also working in a coaching and skill development capacity with the JPHL out here in the Okanagan. So without further ado, I give you Glenn Carnegie. All right, here we are. I don't even know what episode it is. I should have looked at that. I think 132 or something, Glenn. But
they all just
welcome to the
in,
podcast,
hey?
Mr. Glenn Carnegie.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, awesome. We were just kind of joking before we got on that we've never officially met yet, been living in the Valley together and super connected to hockey, both of us. So it seems a little bit weird, but it's awesome we have this opportunity to chat.
I'm sure we've crossed paths many times without knowing it. So yeah, I've heard lots about you. So it's awesome. Nice to finally meet you.
Hopefully it's good stuff.
Yeah, mostly.
Perfect. So yeah, man, we cross paths. Just for the listeners, I got this tournament called the UMH 68, and there's a thing called the my watch list, because it's tough to see every player in the province, and we're trying to identify who the top 2010s are. And a player that played for Glenn submitted, and so Glenn was the reference. So then we got on the phone call, and now here we are on a podcast. So super cool. Maybe we can start there, Glenn. I want to go back and touch on the 11 years as the Canucks skills coach, but right now you're wearing the hat of a coach and skill development guy at the JPHL. So how did that all come about?
Yeah, just they approached me and asked if I'd be interested in doing it, and I was out here in the Okanagan, and when I left NHL, I really wanted to go back and work with young kids and be a little bit more settled, and I was getting a little bit done with all the travel and everything, so it was a great fit for me, and I really believe in the development model that they have, and felt I could be a good fit there. So it's really been exciting. And again, I think the JPHL is 2 years in, and they've done an amazing job with the the league itself, with the quality of players, and they just built this brand new facility in Edmonton, which is amazing. So yeah, it's been a really good experience so far.
Cool. Well, maybe that's a good opportunity to talk about the JPHL. I know, I mean, you're hired by them. I don't believe you're part of the ownership or anything, correct?
No, no,
Yeah. So as far as what they're doing, and maybe this listenership, my listenership is there's it's definitely nationwide and 32
yeah,
countries or something. But I mean, there's a lot of
yeah,
people listening in Western Canada. So maybe we can
yep.
talk about what the Junior Prospects Hockey League is all about.
Yeah, and I think it's just, another opportunity to give the kids more opportunity to develop. And again, so with the JPHL, we play every second weekend. So for me, like, you get a lot more time of ice time and practice time and actual development. It's very similar to the academies in the CSSHL, where they our kids in Kelowna, they do their schooling online, and then they skate for an hour and a half every day and train every day. So it gives you a lot of development time, which I think is a really important facet to your hockey development.
Yeah, and well, it's exactly kind of right up your alley, obviously, with
Yeah,
what you're doing.
yeah,
So with the JPHL, they're in that group in West Kelowna. Are you? I believe you're the head coach of one of the groups. Then are you doing skills for all the teams?
yeah. I was worked with the U15 team primarily, but was out on the ice with all the other teams doing a lot of power skating. The plan next year is to have me even more with the other teams. We had a coach that walked away from the U15 at the last minute there to take a job with the Anaheim Ducks as a scout. So I kind of said I would take that task, and didn't get us out with the other teams as much as I wanted to. But going forward, I think the plan is for me to get out with them at least once a week to do power skating and stuff like that. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Uh, so when I was hockey DBing you, I got to
yeah,
be honest, I was expecting to see some type of a hockey resume, right? Like playing
yeah,
somewhere. Is
yeah.
that right that you didn't play junior or
Well, yeah,
pro
I,
or
I
anything?
did it. I did in Manitoba, and then I went and played in Germany for 3 years in the lower leagues in Germany.
Yep.
Um, and then yeah, I was just playing sometime in the MJHL and the MMJHL in Manitoba. So a
Awesome.
good Manitoba guy. So but I'm also pretty old, so that stuff wasn't too prevalent back in the day.
Right, right.
Yeah,
So where are you from in Manitoba?
Winnipeg.
Oh,
Yeah,
Winnipeg.
so grew up in Winnipeg, yeah, and that's where I started my hockey development. I had a training facility there called Focus Fitness, and then I was working with the Manitoba Moose and worked my way up to the NHL, and so it's kind of gone full circle now, and kind of
Yeah.
getting again back to working with the kids. So
So
I
awesome.
really enjoy it.
So you were playing in Germany and as your playing career then I guess was winding down, like did you know that that was something you wanted to get involved in? Like was the next phase for you was that development or
Uh,
strength and conditioning?
not at that point. I actually went back to Winnipeg, and I was gonna go into law school, and then I found that was way too much reading for me. So, and then I wanted to get into sports psychology. I love the hockey mindset and that aspect of it. So, I was going back and exercise sports science, and there was an old buddy I'd played hockey against. He's a couple years older than me, and he had just started a gym, and he was starting to work with hockey players, and just asked if I wanted to go out and start helping them. And so I did that, and I loved it right away. I was working with like AAA type players at the time, and
Yep.
the young, like 13, 14-year olds up to some midget guys. And then after I was done school, I bonded a company, and it kind of grew from there. And those midget guys was like Jonathan Toews was in there. We had Travis Zajac, the Zajac, there's 4 of the brothers. We had all those guys. And so we had a good group of guys that all came up together. Like, Cam Barker was back in there, and
Right.
Nigel Dawes and Darren Helm. All those guys were all the Winnipeg guys coming up at the time.
That's cool. That's a great group to be working with.
Yeah, it was fun. Colton Orr was in there as well, and he was always a lot of fun.
Cool. That's
So
funny
yeah,
that these, yeah, those names that you're mentioning, and that obviously helps in what you're doing,
for
in
sure.
having these guys go on to play, and you're a piece
Yeah,
of that development.
yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Definitely doesn't hurt. So what was how how do you think that you got your foot in the door with the Moose? Like, how did that all happen?
Well, we actually were doing. So my business partner was called Focus Fitness, and my business partner Jeff Wood, who is still in Winnipeg doing training there. We we've kind of built different facilities. We started in a dressing room at a community club, Gateway Community Club in Winnipeg, and then we built and went to Winnipeg Winter Club, and in that time we started an adult hockey program.
Yeah.
And Mark Chipman, who was then the owner of the Moose, now the owner of the Jets, was in that group, and they were building the new facility, the MTS Center or Bell Center, whatever it's called now. And so we ended up talking to him about the opportunity to work with the Moose, and we wanted to put a facility within that MTS Center. So just through talking to him and meeting with him, and then we met with who was the Canucks GM at the time. I can't remember now, but so then we met with him, and he obviously their thought was, well, we're not going to pay you, but you can say you're the Moose strength coaches and all that. And
Yeah.
we said that wouldn't work, but then Mark Chipman stepped up and said, no, we want you guys to do it. And because he had trained with us, and he knew the guys we were working with, because he was around our kids training.
Right.
So he said, no, I want to bring you guys on. And so he brought us on, and then we did that. And Coach Vigneault was there. So I was working with Alain Vigneault when he was in Manitoba. And then when he went to Canucks, he kind of a couple years later, or the second year, I think, asked me if I wanted to go up. So I started with the Canucks as the assistant strength coach, and then it just built from there into more on ice stuff until at the end there was just all on ice and video work.
Isn't that wild? What a crazy process, and what a crazy
Yeah,
journey, eh?
yeah, and it's like I never necessarily set out to work in the NHL, and I think, like, a strong message and something I learned back then was that it didn't matter where I was. I just wanted to be the best at do the best job I could, and it just led to something else. And then I was working with the Moose. I tried to do the best job I could and learn as much as I can, and then just something else came along, and it just kept going from there. So I think that was a real strong message that I try and pass on to the kids. That, whatever level you're playing at, be the best you can be at that level, and good things can happen. So that was a big part of my process and how I ended up working in the NHL. So
Yeah, good for you. I love that story. Yeah, I mean, and that is such a message I work with the players that I'm talking about. I mean, especially the
yeah,
one, like, you don't like where you are, or you didn't make AAA, or whatever the case may
100%,
be. It's like, well, you got to dominate where you are first, right? Like,
100%. Yeah,
take care of that. And if you take care of that, you're probably gonna get taken care of. So don't, and that was the same way playing in the minors, right? Like,
yeah,
I wanted
100%.
to be in the NHL, and it was like, well, dominate where you're at. I mean, kind of did maybe a couple times, and doesn't happen. But at least you got to take. That's what you got to take control of, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, it's such a big thing between the American League and NHL guys. Like, and part of my job was to always go down and work with the farm team where it was. So I'd spend a week a month, and first it was in Manitoba, then Chicago, then it was Utica. But like I would fly with the players that were getting sent down sometimes, or like I remember driving with Zach Delpy from Buffalo to Utica, and so you kind of got to talk a lot with them, and the mindsets were different. Like, some guys were pissed off and complained about it, and they go down to the farm team and they don't have a great experience. But there's other guys who's like, well, okay, what do I need to work on? What do I have to do? And man, when they got down there, they busted their butts, and sure enough, you're back in the NHL. So
Yeah.
that mindset is really, really important, and you see it all at all levels of hockey. And it's like, you have kids who like you said, didn't make that AAA team. Well, be the best AA player that you can be, and there's a good chance you'll move back up.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and it's a like that development. It's such a long term thing, and I think parents and kids right now forget that. It's like they want it now. They want to play U18 when they should be playing U16 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's dominate where you are, and good things will happen is what I think. So
When I had on there, one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, the difference that you had seen in your career as far
mhm.
as player intangibles are concerned. I mean, and maybe I'll even say personal intangibles, because sometimes
Yeah,
I think parents and players disconnect the two, right? Like,
yeah,
your stick handling from your dedication or humbleness or curiosity, right? Like you talk about some guys that when they went down, they were upset. Some guys had the mindset they just wanted to get better. Can you
yep.
speak to that at all? Like what you've seen through the years of like who does get
Yeah,
better and what those intangibles might be?
yeah, 100%. And to be honest, again, you're hitting the nail on the head. It's like those things are huge, um, especially when you get to that level. Like everyone's good, and I would, people always ask, well, why can this guy get 100 points in the American League, and he can't necessarily get it done in the NHL? And there's a lot of intangibles, a lot of it. I mean, um, there's the guys who come up and do drills, if you're looking at a skill aspect, and then there's the guys who are doing it to learn and doing it to get better, and like are thinking about what they're doing and why they're doing it. And I think, I talk about Jonathan Toews a lot. Ever since he was 14 or 15, he would question why he was doing things, and not in a bad way. It was just he wanted to understand it. He wanted to know why, and then, well, what if I tried this? And I think, and then when I got to the NHL, and then Bo Horvat came along, Bo was very similar. It was very much like I don't want to just do a drill. I want to understand why I'm doing it and master it. And um, I talk a lot about skill development being game ready. I think especially with Instagram nowadays, you see this great skill drill or something, or great move, and it's like, well, I want to go work on that. And I was like, well, okay, there's a lot of fundamentals that you're missing before you can start working on that. So I think one of the big things, to kind of make a long story short, is like understand what you're doing, to have that mindset of every time you're on the ice, like you can get better. And we talk about the ice time that these kids get, and in the academies, that if you aren't getting better, that's a large part on you. Because if you are, listen, they have good coaches. If you're not following what they're doing, and sticking with the details and following the habits, that those are intangibles.
Yeah.
It's like, be the best at the things that take no talent, and your talent will increase. Um, so I'm not sure if I answered your question so much, but
Well, I
but
think you
I, I
did.
I think the mindset of being, it doesn't matter when you're on the ice, get something out of it. Um, the mindset of you're going to be your habits, your off ice habits. If you ask any 16-year-old kid, well, who wants to play in the NHL? Everyone puts their hands up. Well, who's not going to go to that party on Friday or Saturday night? Oh, well, who's going to be up at 6 in the morning training? That after they played a tough game the night before. So those intangibles and that mental toughness, and I read the Angela Duckworth book on grit, and grit is huge.
Yeah.
And so people often ask me, like, well, what's the one skill, or what's the one thing you need to have success in hockey or sport or life? And I think that's the big part of it.
Yeah.
It's so,
Two of my favorite
yeah,
books, Angela Duckworth for sure, Grit, and Carol Dweck, Mindset. I mean,
yeah,
for anyone out there, I think those are two must reads, and
yeah,
really uh well, foundational pieces of like what I even do and why I even have a job, because
for
those
sure.
pieces are things that I think can be taught and is missing for a lot of people, and it's the piece, like it's that piece, right?
That is like I had a buddy who's texted me because his kid was coming up, and he's like, so, like, what's the silver bullet, man? Like, if and I was like, that's it. Like, because everybody's good as you get
Yeah.
up, and like as you get to the higher levels, everyone's good. So it's like, what's going to separate you? And it's often your mindset. It's often what you do when things aren't going well.
Yeah.
And and you know what? It's hard, man. It's hard to make it to the NHL, and it's even harder to stay.
Yeah.
And it and you got to be able. There's injuries. How do you react with an injury? And there's so many variables. You get a coach who, and that's another thing too. Like, I worked with Newell Brown a lot, who's just to me one of the smartest guys in hockey, and we would do video sessions with a lot of players together and working on the ozone area or offensive side of the game. And something he always said to players was like, "Don't mistake criticism for coaching," because he's been doing it forever, and it just the mindset so different of how you have to approach the players, and you
Right.
know what you can show them, and well, you better not show them that they're going to get upset. So it's having thick skin, and
Yeah.
it's a grind, man. It's hard,
I hear you.
but
Yeah, and
yeah.
like, so what you're saying there, I mean, I think there's two sides of that coin. Like, one, and
Mhm,
you must have seen it actually, and that you've been at it over a decade now.
mhm.
Like how you need to talk to a player. The communication skills are vastly different, I find.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How they're going to take information, and I think that's where that sports psychology and the understanding of the human is really, really important.
for sure.
One, and the other side is like, boy, if the player could be a little bit more approachable and not
Yeah,
so, I don't know what the right word is, I want to be careful with that, but like
yeah,
that just opens the horizons for you a lot more. So I think,
100%.
you see it. So me as a coach, like, yeah, okay, I'm careful. What does this guy need? How do you deliver that
Yeah,
message? How do you get the most out of him? So I'm always thinking that way. And the other side, I'm trying to build that guy up so he can just be have a greater bandwidth for
right.
communication. Oh,
Yeah, and that's yeah, and for me, coaching at the U15 level was challenging at times for me, just with my expectations. And it's like, you've worked with pros for so long, and then you're there, and it's like I had to keep reminding myself like they aren't pros, right? Like, they're gonna make mistakes and that, and like so early in the year, I found I was like, yelling more or getting more upset, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, you
yeah,
know, and that didn't mean I still had the expectations, and I didn't want to. I wanted them to come up to the level of my expectations, but I think I had to change the approach on how I was delivering it, and instead of being angry about things, it was more like, okay, talk about the positives, show them what they're doing well, and it just again for me, I had to change my mindset there too, and so it's been a good learning experience for me. Still, always continuing
I
to
think
learn,
so. Yeah. I think it's one of
yeah,
the greatest gifts of coaching. Like it, and to do it well, I think you have to be evolving through the process,
yeah,
right? Like you're finding more about yourself every
yeah.
day,
It's
as am
self
I,
checks,
right?
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
What's
it's
working, what isn't. I'm going
yeah,
to circle back though, just on when I asked you about the player intangibles, and just sort
yeah,
of maybe put a little bow on it, because I think what you're talking about there, and one of the things that I love talking about with players is the concept of deliberate practice, which is kind of just a nice way to put what you're talking about, I think,
100
right?
100%.
Like
Yeah,
I talk all the time about, I mean, there's one thing to have an individual skill session, which is great. And if you can get out there with an individual guy and
yeah,
working on your own stuff, and fantastic. But there's
yeah,
also like the team practice, which is the general scenario for most players everywhere,
for
that the
sure.
coach is trying to find a plan for 17 to 20 players on the ice.
Yeah,
Now, if you can individualize that practice for you and make it now about Johnny and the team, like every time you're out there, like you are gaining that developmental advantage, right? But that's, I mean, that's a
100%.
professional approach in its own sense, but it is a perspective difference that I think that a lot of
Yes.
guys just don't grab onto.
Yep.
Have you like, do you talk or try and teach that aspect of that? I know you speak
Uh,
to it, but is that something that you talk with your players when you're working them about?
all the time, and it's like I think that's probably one of the things I get most frustrated with. You see these kids who have the talent, but then they're coming out, and for me, I'm huge on fundamentals like the edge
Mhm.
work, your skating, your stride. But you have these kids who are, they've had success in hockey. It's like, well, I don't need to work on this, or like, I have this. So it's like an easy edge work drill, and it's like they don't have their knees bent. They're kind of their body positions out of position, and it's that stuff to me is huge because you have to master those fundamentals. And again, if you don't, at some point it's going to catch up to you. So for me, that's probably the most frustrating thing when you get those players out there that you know they can do it, but they just won't dial it in on those easy tasks. And
Yeah.
and it's funny, we're talking about it getting something on the ice every time. I used to work with Mike Keane when he played for the Manitoba Moose, and so he would train with us in the summers as well. And we had our summer skates, but he was also going out with his buddies and playing like beer league hockey in the summer. I was like, Keener, what are you doing going out and skiing with those guys? And he's like, well, every time I go out there, I work on one thing for me. And I was like, ah, I was like, okay. And
Yeah.
this was, after he'd won his 3 Stanley Cups, and again, wasn't the most skilled player in the NHL, but he was a really good NHL player.
Yeah.
But that was his mindset. Every time I'm on the ice, I'm going to work, and I'm going to work on something specific. And then our summer skates, like I remember it would be July 1st, and he was the hardest worker out there. He was in puck battles. He was, and the other guys like Kate Keener, like, easy. It's July 1st. And he was like, man, I'm here to get better. And he didn't care.
Yeah.
And I love that mentality. So
Unapologetic about his standard.
100%
Yeah.
every
That's
time. And
That's such a
yeah,
great message. I love that you talked that. And another thing, I just, yeah, what a great conversation, because that's totally
mhm,
one of the things that I'm talking about. I don't care if it's a junior kid or whatever, like whatever
yep,
standard you're at right now, it's really not good enough, right? So
nope,
like to understand where you're at and where you want to get to and where that needs to elevate, then there's like your own personal barometer and you're guiding your own ship, right? Like there
yep,
should be that internal challenge. And when you hear about somebody like that, it takes balls, to be quite honest, to do
100% it
that,
does.
right? Like what Mike Keane does. It's You're not worried about what your peer group thinks. You're not worried about how you're judged. You are very, very authentically like understanding your own goals and what it takes for you to get there. And that takes a lot
100%.
of maturity for sure.
Yeah, and again, that's Jonathan Toews, same way, right? Like it didn't matter what we'd be in the pool and doing races, and he wouldn't win a swimming race, and he was pissed. Like he did not want to lose. And same thing, guys like, oh, take it easy. But he's like, no, like I'm here, I'm gonna get better. And someone now who has that, and I see it as TJ Ginla with the Rockets. Man, he is dialed in, and I love working with having the opportunity to work with a guy like him. And again, same thing. There's one speed, and it's 100% on every single drill we do with the Rockets. And I was like, it's so evident where this guy is going to go and what he's going to do. And it's like, if I'm a teammate, man, I'm jumping on that, and I'm doing exactly what he does. So he's another
Right.
one that has that mentality where it's like, I'm here to get better, guy. You do you, but this is
Yeah.
how what I'm doing.
I
So
love that.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. The the fundamentals. Oh my goodness. Like
Hmm.
I'm so glad you said that, because not only do they, and I don't care how old the kid is, right? Like
Yeah.
generally, like, yeah, the younger guys, well, I'm not even going to generalize, but they're not as good as they think they are at it,
No, man, they're
right?
not.
You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
think they got it, and like, no, you're not even close. Like, like,
Yep.
and if you don't get that outside edge, like, perfect, yes, it is going to catch up with you, and it's like
Yep.
I love doing the like, and geez, I'm all over the map in my head right now. But like the
Yeah.
idea of that, like the simplification of the stride, of the edges, doing that with intention is like that's to me, that's like the golden bullet. And I think everyone's trying to like
100%.
add in more pylons and do this and do that. And they think it's fancy. And it's like, I don't know, call it boring, but it's like what
Yeah.
you need is reps and this stuff. And I don't care if you're 25 and in the show, they're still doing that stuff.
NHL guys are still doing it, man. The
Yeah.
best NHL players are doing it.
Yeah.
And and it's so important, that's an interesting point, like even as a skills coach. And there's so much competition, and you're trying to make a living. It's like sometimes I struggle with, like, man, this isn't very fun, but I know it's the right stuff, and I know it's what the kids need. And so I try and work in smaller groups and really focus on that. And um, I just think it's so important. And again, when you have the kids who will, and that's a mindset in itself, who, when it's not the most fun, but will be dialed in, and they are
Yeah.
doing it with, like, even a lot of it is setting your posture, right? So, you're in a turn. Where are your shoulders? Where's your head? Well, let's work on it, master it, and then we add game like drills where, okay, I'm on a rush and I want to do a delay and I want to have my head turned in the middle of the ice. Like, it's
Mhm.
just there. It's just
Yeah.
there, and the other thing, like, you think of, you see all the highlight reel, deets or whatever in the NHL, and a lot of that is skating. A lot
Yeah.
of it, it's not so much the hands. Yes, there's guys but a lot of it is their ability to use their edges and to change direction and have deception with their feet. And so once you've mastered the fundamentals, then that other stuff is just creativity
Yeah.
and
I agree.
and being able to have your head up and see what's there. Um, because you could practice a through the legs drill all you want, but the right scenario has to be there for it to be successful.
Yeah.
Or you
Yeah.
have to you manipulate, the defenders to set that up. So that isn't just coming. Like, that's players' creativity, and because their fundamentals are so good.
Yeah. And from the aspect of like, I'm just thinking like some of the stuff that I run, and I mean connecting the edges to the hands, right? And I'm,
Hmm.
I'm doing this right. So you're on your inside edge and you're bringing the puck across.
Yep.
Other inside edge bring the puck, or you disconnect your hands from your feet and you're doing the actually opposite, right? Like
That's right. Yep.
when I went, because we get these patterns locked in, right? Like people skate a certain way and they do things a certain way, and when you can unlock those and create some new patterns, now in a 360 dynamic game, you can do whatever needs to be done instead
Yeah.
of going A to B through this pylon, do this. Like to me, like you need to do a little bit of that, but like I love like just the fundamentals, structure that in, and then they can be creative in how the game is played. And I think that's a big difference maker.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think, like, Elias Pettersson is one where you talk about a guy who disassociates his hands and his feet. That guy's so deceptive because it's like people would say, "Oh, excuse me, he's not a great skater, or whatnot," but he's very deceptive with his skating. It's hard. Like, a lot of guys, their stick count skate. It's a rhythm. So you're
Hmm.
defending it, you can find that rhythm, and but with him, it's like you can't figure out what he's necessarily doing. And I think that's one of the things that makes him really, really deceptive. And the way he comes across the ice and he's sculling on his edges, and he adds a little delay there, and then he on his just scraping his edges a little bit, just buys him a little bit of time.
Yeah.
And so those little things, it's like, man, it's not so much his hands, it's the ability to do that with his feet while watching what's playing and to delay, and then that just creates time and space for him.
Yeah. And it's not a
And
pattern. Like it's like
right.
like I think that's like, and we don't even I don't think we even consciously understand that in a game or a defender, but like there is a rhythm to a crossover and there is a
Sure.
sequence to how you stick handle, and like and you can anticipate that. When that gets
Yes.
thrown off somehow, now
It's
you've bought
hard.
yourself that microsecond, right?
Yep. Yep.
And yeah, anyways, and that's like I like to geek out on this stuff sometimes, and I think it's super interesting,
It is.
especially
Yep.
in the development aspect that we're both in now. We're kind of in the same age bracket right now when it comes to
Yep.
that stuff, and yeah, there's so much there that's really
Yep.
juicy and kind of
Yep.
exciting.
It
I
is.
remember personally, like uh why this is relevant. I was bigger, faster, right? So I could kind
Yeah.
of when I was younger, so I could drive wide if I could continue going, then I
Yeah.
would and just go wide. And if the guy would
Yep.
turn, then I would come back in on my forehand, right? And
Yep.
that was like my move because it worked.
Yep.
The funny thing was though, that got so patterned in for me. Like once I got to, I think it was maybe probably BCHL when I first got to BCHL as a 15-year-old. Like that was not all I needed.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know what
for
I mean?
sure. Yeah.
I needed to be able to
100%.
cut back on the other side, and it was like so I had to learn that on the fly, and I just remember, like and that was sort of my first, personal understanding of, like, the pattern that I had developed personally,
Yep.
you know? And it was hard to unlock that when it was, like,
Yeah.
so rote, memorized, not even understanding, so, yeah, anyways, that's sort of an idea of, like, why both ways and, like, turn both ways, and players don't even
Yeah.
understand that they turn better right than left, and they always turn right in a game,
Yeah.
you
Oh, yeah.
know?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, for sure. And that, yeah, and that's what makes the development side so fun, and that the creativity of throwing stuff in there. And often, like I'll do a simple drill and it's just about that. It's about going both ways and having your hands in a position where you can make a play or having your head turned in a position where you can make a play. And yeah, I'll have often coaches in the stands and like, well, like, what were you like? That looked like a pretty easy drill. And it's like, well, yeah, do you know what we were working on? They're like, well, it was then. I was like, no, not even close. And we were working on head position when our puck's here. We were working on head position with our feet going this way, rotating our shoulders so we were facing the net, right? Like just different things like that. And it's very subtle. And again, it takes kids that are special and want to work on that stuff to actually get it
Yeah.
and to understand it. And I think it's so important to add different variables like that into your game.
Just going to take a short break from the podcast to share with you how exciting the UMH 68 has been this year for me. I've been traveling all over British Columbia, watching the 2011 age group as well as the 2010 age group, watching provincial championships, watching regional camps, watching different tournaments, and trying to identify who the top players in the province are, and also getting their contact information. That sometimes is the biggest problem, and then getting the invitations out to announce that they have been selected as a real special group within the province to come together with me and a ton of other professionals for 4 days in June. This concept was proven last year in a 30-day window with the 2009 age group, a super successful event where we brought in 3 teams of the top players in the province for a hockey experience that none of them had quite had before. And this year it is growing to 2 age groups, and really excited with the programming that we have, the people we have coming in, with the messaging, the level of competition that we are going to have, who we have on the benches for coaches, the sponsors that are ready to make this an amazing experience for not only the players, but also the families as well. So lots of fun. We are building up the groups for sure. We have lots of official registrations in. We have the photos of the players in that I'm going to be releasing soon on social media as we reach some higher thresholds and announce some of these players. And yeah, it's super exciting. So if you want to find out more about what the UMH 68 is, especially if you live in British Columbia, by all means, check out the website, upmyhockey.com. If you feel that you are in the 20 age bracket, or 2010 age bracket, the 2011 age bracket, and you have not received an invitation yet, and you feel you are in the top players of BC conversation, top 68 to top 100 players in BC, then by all means, put yourself on the watch list, add your reference in there, who your coach is, and we will do some digging. And if there's a room available, you may have earned yourself an invite just by being proactive and taking care of your own business, which is definitely something that I teach and I mentor with the athletes that I work with, is like taking care of your own journey. Take ownership. Don't wait for it to happen. If it's something that you feel that you deserve and you've worked hard enough to gain an invite, then by all means, beat your drum and get on the website and fill out the form and say, hey, Coach Jason, I think you missed somebody important. I love that about people being proactive in their own development. So yeah, the UMH 68, super exciting. Lots of work for me on my end from an administration standpoint, but it's so worth it once the product is in, and once these athletes show up in Vernon and get to experience something that is going to stay with them for a long time. If you happen to be somebody that received an invitation and you are potentially trying to make a decision, I know there is lots of options in the spring market. I promise you, if you've listened to me at all, I'm a straightforward kind of guy. I'm black and white. This is not like anything else out there. I think this is something that you clear your plate for, that you move stuff around to attend, and you are not going to regret the experience at all. You're going to be thankful and grateful that you decided to make that decision. It's not just another spring tournament by any stretch of the imagination. It is building and growing the province's best players. That's the idea behind it, to get to know your peer group while learning and building not only your hockey game, but also your personal development game. And you will leave with a big smile on your face and be happy that you came. Also at a price that I believe is unrivaled in the marketplace for what you are getting from a programming standpoint. So yes, this is a franchise UMH 68 that is growing. growing for sure. Like I said previously, we will be planning to expand into Alberta next year, Saskatchewan, and maybe Manitoba at some point. I believe this to be a Western Canadian franchise for sure, and really allow these players the opportunity to come together and experience hockey the way it should be played at the high level that they're at. So I will leave that with you. Once again, upmyhockey.com for the UMH68 showcase if you're curious and want to be involved. Also, if you happen to live in Alberta, Saskatchewan, or Manitoba, and if you are a hockey person that has a network, I am looking to expand with like-minded people that want to be a part of this thing. I obviously have a pretty wide and vast network with a lot of guys there, but there is connections to arenas that we need. We do need to be in markets that there is some influence being able to be had. So if this is something that you are excited about, that you think it would be a good fit in either your region or in your province, by all means reach out on the website, and I'd love to have a conversation about it. Now let's get back to the discussion with Mr. Glenn Carnegie. Can you speak to that whole, like you touched on it briefly, but like the race to be the most confusing, let's even say, or like having the most props? Like I think like as a common hockey parent or mom or dad, and you're out there and they're paying money and they're investing in these things. It can be like a circus, right? Because you want to do the next thing and you want to do the next thing, when really the best thing for the kid is to get as many reps at the one thing that they want to try and work on, right? Like, which maybe doesn't show well, like how do you
100%.
fight that and how do you balance that? And what's the message to parents out there?
Yeah, well, it's something you do all the time, right? Like and I think my whole thing is to stick to what I believe in. And maybe that's not for everybody, and that's okay. But I think this is the way I believe in development, and that's not to say I don't add props or things at times, because I do, but I'm always very careful as to doing that and then taking them away and having them do the same situation in a game like scenario. So yeah, I think for everyone it's finding the correct balance for you, and just understanding how you believe in development and sticking with it. And it's like, if a parent came and asked me why I'm doing that or why I'm not doing this, I'll have a clear answer as to why. And if that doesn't work for them, I'm fine with that, right? And it's like and that's the one thing with development. It's like there's no one way, right? There's so many different ideas out there, great ideas, and for me personally, I'm always looking at different ideas, and I may see something and I was like, I like that part of it, but not that part. So then I'll incorporate it into my way, right? And I don't have a definition for my way by any means, but I think for me, I want them to, learn a skill and practice it. So if it's just a simple turn, for example, then I want to apply it. So maybe with some props or something, apply it, and then I take all that stuff away, and now it's game like application. So it's kind of like that. You learn it, then for me, it's you teach it, let them do it, reps, and then you apply it in that game like fashion. And then I've found pretty well that they really pick up the skills. And the other thing with hockey, and there's so many different variables. Like the players are in different positions, and so there's not like it's not like a pitch and a hit, right? Like there's so many different variables. When you enter the zone, is your guy middle lane driving? Is your guy wait like so? And you have to have the ability to make those reads. And I think that's something when you just add all the props and all that, you lose a lot of that reading ability. And there's lots of, you hear scouts and that say, well, he's a great drill guy. Like in a drill, man, he's a first rounder. And then you put him in a live practice or a game, it's like, oh, okay. There's why he's not a first rounder.
Yeah. One of the things that when I'm actually behind a bench and I am in the spring, because I run my own spring programs, but the thing that I'm that I talk about the players with, and I also try and incorporate it into the practices. And it's like, and again, it's a stupid, simple fundamental, but it's like being able to control the puck with your head up.
100%. Yeah.
Right? Like that, like I'm not saying it gets forgotten, but like that, without that element, you can take in no information and you can't make good decisions, right? So like you have to be able to establish that. And then when I'm behind the bench, it's like, what did you see? Right.
Yep.
And what was your read to make the decision that you made? So instead of like, I don't know, for me, it's like I'm not teaching a 2-1-2, let's say, or a 1-2-2, and you have to
Yeah.
stand here. Like I want them to understand the concepts and the dynamics of the game, and they're picking up the information because it's such a dynamic sport, and then
Yep.
they are responding to that information. So like
Right.
without the head up, you can't see it, and without the idea of like teaching concepts, I think they don't get it either. Like is that something that you like? You just said it essentially. Like there's some guys that are great in practice, but they can't compute or they can't
Yep.
see or whatever this thing is. Like, how do you go about coaching that? Like the hockey IQ, I guess, side of the game.
Yeah, and that's always a debate whether you can improve it in that, and I believe you can. So I work with a lot of guys on video as well, where I'll do
Mm,
game analysis, and like you're right, there's some really skilled guys who it's like, so when you see in video or you go through video with them, it's like, what do you like? I'll stop, like, what do you see here? And they can say, oh, I had this option, that option, that. Yeah, you did. Okay, next one. It's like, what did you see here? Oh, yeah, well, I didn't see that on the ice, and but now, yeah, I had this. So, like, they get it, but it's like in that time, in that moment, they aren't seeing it. And
yeah,
so for me, I've taken guys and it's simple. It's like, you're a really good hockey player, but you don't play with your head up. Or it's even, let's say they're doing a delay on the rush, and as soon as you're making your turn, for me, I want to be looking to the middle of the ice. Um, but you're not. Your shoulder and your head and your chin is in line. So as you're turning, I'm looking at the boards, looking at boards. Now I see, if it's the D man's there thinking low to high, I'm not even seeing my options in the scoring area.
yeah,
And it's like, okay, so you go low to high. Fine. It's not a terrible play, whatever, but here's what you're missing.
yeah,
And it's like you want to create offense. Well, it's often as simple as working on your skating with your head in the right spot. And again, like it's so fast, like that hole or a seam is there for a second. If you don't take it, it's gone. And then yeah, you make a safe play or you'll cycle it back into the corner, which again is, sometimes it's good play, but I want to challenge guys to create more offense, to keep more possession of pucks. And on a rush, like, you know, do you yes, you dumped it in, it's fine, but you dumped it in a spot where they broke out and now you're back checking. So even simple things like that of a soft chip to your strong side corner, that's a good skill to have.
yeah,
That's a skill,
yeah,
right? And then getting in there and then now you're engaged in your puck battle skills, your stick on puck. So all that stuff is so simple, but it just takes reps and reps and reps. And again, I think through video, it's a lot of video, and I try and again, you're careful. It's you don't want to show too much negative, so you got to back it up with positive. But I think it's important to see us make mistakes. Um, I think it's important to we all make them in the NHL. Guys make mistakes.
yeah,
It's kind of you got to you learn from it, and the kids who are willing to go through it and watch. Sometimes it's 20 minutes of me showing like, okay, here's what were your options. You're not seeing it. So sometimes you have to hammer home that point and then rebuild them up and say, okay, well, here's now all things you did really, really well. And let's, again, I don't want to not work on things they do well. It has to be a balance. So,
yeah.
and it's not always okay. Well, you're not very good at this, so we need to work at this. Um, yeah. So
Yeah, well, I mean,
yeah,
if they're playing like this, like that, just get back to the idea of like being able to have a puck on your stick and have your head up, like
yeah,
that is so freaking critical because you're not going to see that chip, or maybe you only see the chip because that's all you see is like that middle lane drive, and you think your lanes are cut off.
that's right.
Whereas, like, and you've seen it this year, like it it's even like I watch junior hockey. It's crazy. Like the next layer of offense, which is very, very often the best layer of offense, is behind you,
100%. Yeah,
right?
it's funny you say that. I often do like a 2 versus 2 continuous drill. It's common drill. It's like the one-on-one down, and then that the forward on the other corner leaves the
Yeah,
defense, and he joins, right?
yeah,
So sometimes, like the back checker might have fallen or is in a corner, and it's a clear 1-on-2. But the guy with the puck, he goes and attacks that defender 1-on-1,
yeah,
and it's like through the triangle. I'm like, guys, how do you not see this? Like, you shoulder check. Okay, my guy's coming. It's a 2-on-1. Maybe pull up a little bit, delay a little bit, wait for him, and create 2-on-1s. Um, and that,
aye, aye.
and it's yeah, it's like, and again, it's a skill, and that's an IQ, and it's just you got to keep showing them and showing them and showing
Yeah,
them. I think our guys on the U15 team, that was something I try to incorporate with them. It's like, you guys, you got to see the ice. You got to take your time a little bit. Like, you don't
yeah,
have to go, 100 miles an hour constantly. It's changing speeds. Delay a little bit. Work on, and that's Pedersen, a great example. He's so good at little delays with his skating,
yeah,
where he just turns his foot, scrapes the ice while he's still stick handling, and it's actually delaying him, so that D's creating more, gets going back at the same speed, and he creates space that way. So
yeah,
those are the skills that I get fired up about too,
yeah.
because it's just, there's little things, and everybody can do it.
Yeah, and you have to be so darn repetitive. I think that's the hard part, and like the consistency as far as like, I mean, what we do as coaches, because if you do move on or past it and they haven't got it, like we've missed the boat,
Missed it.
right? And trying to bring that loop, like that teaching feedback loop into, this is why we're now doing this drill and practice. Because remember the 3-on-2 where we had the third guy high and nobody saw him? Like, we need to be able to have our inside
Yeah,
edge with our head up and cut, right? Like, and
yeah,
it's, I mean, some days I'm better at it than others, and you kind of
yeah.
forget. But it's like reminding them about what the process is, right? So this is now executable in the game. But
Yeah, and that's it's really hard as a coach too, and like as the season goes, and it's like we're often so reactive to the past game, instead of like, well, no, here's my plan and I'm sticking to it. It's my
yeah,
development plan, and I'm gonna stick with it. And yeah, like for me, I didn't spend a lot of time on systems in that. It was more like Monday's power skating, Tuesday was skills, Wednesday was puck battles and game like skills. Thursday we do a little bit of power play or like system stuff, just to going over a forecheck, but and then it's games.
yeah,
Um, so for me, and then let's say there's things that weekend, and then we practice Tuesday. It's like, oh man, we got to work on this. We got to work on this. I was like, nope, we're sticking with this plan, and this is how we're doing it. And working with an NHL coach who probably instilled that was Alain Vigneault. He was very much, we are sticking with our plan. We set the plan. Everyone knew it, start of the year, and he didn't sway from it too much. Even though people are saying, "Oh, you got to work on this, you got to work on this," he was very much, "No, let's let's stick on our plan, and we want to be." In 2011, we went to the Cup Finals. Like, this is where we want to be then.
yeah.
So it's that whole year of developing, and all the players bought in, and it was a super super fun year.
Yeah,
Um,
I bet.
and I think that's so important to set, and it's hard work to set that plan, but once it's done, you almost don't have to worry about it later. So it's like every time practice came around, I already knew what we were, maybe not the exact drills, but I knew the template of practice already. I knew, so your work's done.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
and
just a
it's
lot.
definitely repeatable, right? And you tweak as you
Yeah,
go and everything else.
yeah,
But
yeah. It's
um,
top heavy, but once you've had that plan, like you've been on the ice. I had pretty much a lot of new players. So once you kind of see what you have, it's like, okay, well, and for me, skating's always the the king thing that we got to work on all the way up. So
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's so funny too, because I am 100% with you. Like, especially in today's game. I mean,
yeah,
if you can't skate, you can't play. I tell my guys that all the time. Like, you
yep,
have to be a plus skater. You mean to play
yep,
at any type of top level. Because then you're relevant. Like, you're still relevant. You can still impact the game, right? You
Oh
can
yeah,
not have great hands, and you can maybe even not see the ice great. But if you can get to a puck, or if you can get in on a back check, like, you're relevant, right? So,
100%.
um, so yeah, I'm all about it. But it's also funny. Like, I have, mind you, I haven't done a good job of marketing it, and I'm blessed that a lot of my stuff up here just fills up on its own. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I did this breakfast club skate thing this year, Wednesday morning breakfast club, like,
yeah.
and announcing there's, like, we're not doing any pucks. It's an hour
Right.
for 6
Yeah,
sessions, and it's like my least attended, like, booked thing,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it's actually the best thing that I probably do.
100%. Yeah, it's like guarantee. I guarantee it is, and that's the other thing. It's like we've been talking about. It's like not as many kids want to do that.
Yeah,
It's yeah, but for me, it's so important. And again, to work with small groups in that environment, man, they're going to get better. And it's like
yeah,
those are the kids you're going to see that develop as those
yeah,
ones who are willing to do that and understand it and work at it. And then it's you put them in other things and they just already have that mindset and everything
yeah.
develops a lot faster that way. So
I
yeah,
know.
and it's like we've talked about it. It's hard as a skills developer, power skating guy, and you have parents in the stands, and it's like, oh man, I'm doing a lot of teaching here, and it's not all that exciting. And oh, by the way, I don't have pucks out there. Um, it's but it's the best stuff, man.
Yeah. I
Yeah, so
100% agree. And if yeah,
yeah,
I mean, and that's where the buy-in goes, like, when I'm working with the players, is like, if you can get, like, curious about it, like, how,
yeah,
like, be super competitive internally about, like, trying to master it, like,
yeah,
trying to, like, bear down for that period of time that you're out there. Like, that is when you just see kids skyrocket, and it
yeah,
continues on.
yeah,
Um, it's when you're talking about, I'm going to talk about just Jonathan Toews for a second, because I think
yeah,
you've talked about him a few times, and I had Dane
yeah,
Jackson on, who coached him at the
yeah,
university
yeah,
level,
yeah,
and we talked a little bit intangibles, and he said he was the first kid at, like, 19 years old that showed up at our program that, like, spoke openly about his day starting the night before when he would go
oh
to
yeah,
bed, so he could get
yeah,
up on time to make the most of his day. Like, he said, like, this guy had, like, captain written all over him, like, from the start.
yeah,
But in my mind, those are, like, if that's not your natural habit, like, this is something that you can learn from example, from seeing, like, these are things that you can
yeah.
apply to yourself. So maybe just talk a little bit more about Jonathan Toews. I think he probably deserves a little more airtime.
Yeah, and I think it's it's hard to do. Like people know this stuff, but to actually do it is hard, and to make the sacrifice that he did. Like at when we started with him at 14, he was a pro already. Like you know, a lot of the kids. So we trained 5 days a week in the summer, and and it was long. It was 2 hour days, and um, he was always on time, always like, and on time meant like when workout started, he had his shoes on, his water was full. It wasn't like, well, I'm here, but I still haven't tied my shoes. I still got to get my water. That just a little thing right there,
Yeah.
and then it's like, we had the same training time every day. He didn't plan dentist appointments or doctor appointments during his workout time. And again, that's something that stuck out to me when I was starting out. Like, I learned so much from him coming up in my career, having him as a an athlete that we worked with, because his habits were always so good, and it came into through his university career, and also just I always talk about him having a relentless pursuit of excellence. So even today, he's still working on things to better himself. Even, after he won his first Stanley Cup, it's like, okay, Glenny, like this summer, we're going to do X, Y, Z. This is what I want to focus on. He would send me an Excel sheet that had his days, and it was like, yep, good, we got it. And then I think maybe after maybe it was a second cup, and then, or it was around two, it might have been around the first, but he started wanting to explore with some different training methods, and the other thing is like we had an open communication about it. So he wanted to do some things he had saw somewhere else, and he came to me about it, and I'm like, okay, this now it's probably my top client or whatever. And as a strength coach or skills guy, it's like my mindset was like, well, I want to learn as much about it and help him do that. I wanted the best for him. And if he felt that's what he needed to do, so I went into Minnesota with him to where this trainer was. And, you know, he's like, okay, I want to do some of these workouts back in Winnipeg. And I was like, great. So, you know, I learned from that strength guy too. And I was open to it. I wasn't like, oh no, it's like my way is the only way, or, you know, you have to train this way. He's a professional athlete and he knew what he felt he needed. He didn't, and that's the other thing about a lot of these guys is they don't want to do what everyone else is doing. They want new ideas. They want to do something that only they're doing. So
Yeah.
we came back and now John's doing these different things in the gym, and the guy's like, well, what's he doing? Why is he doing that? Well, so he's always that leader, man. And like
Yeah.
even, you know, he'd text me. It's like, well, have you seen this? Have you seen this? What do you think of this? And I think again, for me, like I was like, oh man, I don't want to lose him as a client, but I also just I just wanted what was best for him.
Yeah.
And it was, and I think that helped our relationship continue and grow. And, you know, I worked with him through his NHL time out in Lake of the Woods at his cabin. We had there's a nice in just outside Kenora where I had a bunch of NHL guys. And so we would, you know, guys would boat to the rink, and then it was to one of their cabins, and they had gyms at their cabin. It was awesome. But he was always the leader as to this is what I'm doing, guys. You can do what you're doing, but this is what I'm doing. If you want to do it, yeah, you can do it with me, but I'm not like,
Yeah.
so I guess just a relentless pursuit of excellence always, and it never satisfied. I mean, it's you know, the 2 days after his cup party, and it's like, okay, when are we starting?
Yeah.
And it's like,
That's a
you know,
mindset. The
it's
freaking
100%,
mindset.
and it's a choice. And
Yes.
it's just hard to make that choice. And everyone knows, you know, the right things to do, but can you do it? Can you, again, like I said, you know, and I remember, I guess when he was named captain of Blackhawks, so he came back and he's like, man, like he was 19 or or whatever it was, and he's like, what do I know? And I was like, well, John, they chose you for a reason. It's like, don't change anything, just be who you are. And you know, and then we talked about what leaders he respected in NHL, and I was like, well, do you have access to their numbers? It's, yeah. I was like, call them. And the thing that amazed me is like he went home and called them. It's like that's a choice. Where other guys like will take that, but don't do it. They don't. Well, I'm not going to call them. You know, I don't want to like be that guy. He does it. If
Yeah.
it's going to make him better, he does it, and that's something I've always respected and admired about him, and learned so much from him about that stuff. So I
Yeah.
think that kind of would sum up him and the way he is. And yeah, it was just an awesome person.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the mindset of getting of improvement. There's this definitely there's an internal competition. I think that
Oh, yeah.
drives guys. I think there's a curiosity level. If I have to use kind of my language, I think that guys that are interested in their best, like in whatever that looks like, they're really curious about what's out there and how it applies to them, right? And
Yes.
what else they can be doing. The other thing that I heard from your story from him that I think aligns with what I talk about is the idea of team and like your circle. You know, that you are not ever good enough not to get help from somebody, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
definitely don't trust every Tom, Dick, and Harry, but
No, for sure.
be diligent with who it is and what they align with and their philosophy, and you know all those things are important. But the best in the world have guys around them
Oh yeah.
without question, you know,
Yeah.
without question. And
For sure.
and I mean, even from that side, I mean, Nathan McKinnon has been super open about the idea that when he broke through, the difference was that he actually had somebody work on his head with him. I
Yeah.
mean, he had every physical tool man could speak of, but he wasn't producing at the rate he wanted to, and he got some help with that, right? Like,
Yep.
what a humbling thing to have to say, right?
Yep.
And look at him now, right? Like off to the races, you know. So
Well,
it's
yeah. And
just I'm repeating that just for the messaging out there, right? I mean, these are things that are choices for people.
it's choices. And
Yeah,
again, they're hard choices because usually it comes with some kind of sacrifice. And like I said, everyone says they want to do this and have this success, but are you willing to actually do everything it takes?
yeah,
And you know, and that's hard to do. And year after year, day after day, it makes it even harder.
Yeah.
But and
How do you
that's
feel about this? I'm gonna sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
yeah,
off,
yeah,
but
no worries.
I just in my head because it's such a arms race right now sometimes with parents about, the program or how much ice or where, and I can,
Yeah,
and they're punching every ticket to everything. Um, Now, my son and I need to preface this because he did play CSSHL
yeah,
Academy last year, which they were
yep,
on the ice all the time, which
yep,
is the first year where I've kind of like allowed that to happen. And I'm just gonna,
yep,
and I know you coach in a program that has a lot of availability to
yep.
ice time and stuff too, but I just want to take it back like the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year old. Like I was the guy that like didn't have my guys and everything
Right. Yeah,
because I wanted them to have some ownership and accountability and interest in their own development, right? That they
yep,
weren't waiting for me to drive them somewhere, but they would choose to go and shoot pucks, or they would
yeah,
choose to
100%.
try and find some other way to make themselves better. Like I thought that just again, me and my philosophy, like that internal side of it, which is kind of hard to teach, is really important as far as the longevity of like whether it's being a hockey player or just being a good human.
Yeah,
How do you feel about that? Because I think there's a lot of kids that are just dragged around everywhere, and then when it comes time for them to be a pro, they have no idea how to do it because they've just been told what to
yeah,
do forever.
yeah. I think that is a huge thing right now, and I think you're exactly right. It's first of all, do they want to do it, and are you dragging them to all these things? If you're dragging them to all these things, I think you're wasting your time
Right.
because, like we said, if they don't love it, at some point it gets too hard. Like it just whether it's junior or whatever, it's too much. And if you didn't love to do it, I think you just fall off the wayside. Um, but yeah, if and you, and it's a conversation that could go either way. But it's like you even talk about multi-sport now. It's like, well, should they be doing all these other things? And yes, I think they do. But the environment we live in right now is the more ice time you're out there, typically those are the kids that are going further in hockey. And whether it's right or wrong, I don't know. But if the kid wants to do it and is asking to do it and is excited to go, I think it's great. And I
Yeah.
grew up in Winnipeg where we had access to outdoor ice, so it was a lot less structured. But I mean, we lived at the rink, and we were on the ice, 4 or 5 hours a day, pretty well.
Yeah.
Um, so, and out here, it's everything's a little bit more structured, which I don't love. I think kids should just be able to play more.
Yeah.
Um, but for me, it's yeah, like it's about whether they want to do it, and if they do, and you have the means to do it, and again, you're not taking away from family time because I think that's important that they're kids too.
Mhm.
Um, I think yeah, if they're excited to do it, and I know parents here and that drive their kids. They're playing in the HPL or HSL, and they're driving their kids to Vancouver every weekend, and they're half the teams in Merritt, half the teams somewhere else. So they're driving to practice, and if they love it and the kids love it, and you know have
Yeah.
at it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No
It's
judgment from me. I mean, that's all
right,
good.
yeah,
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 at all. I just found like even like working with these I don't know, privileged, entitled kids, that have had kind of that environment. Like when they get out in these, like you would think like a U18 prep team, where you're
mm,
paying 30 grand as a parent, like these guys would be dialed in. I would think. I mean, that was just my perspective. Yet I have clients that are on we have there's guys vaping at the back of the bus. There's guys,
yep,
you know what I mean? Like just crazy stuff that you would think like would not be happening. Or something
oh
as
yeah,
simple as like uh an NHL scout coming to talk to a team on Zoom. This was my favorite U18.
yeah,
I
yeah,
won't talk about the program or whatever, but it
right,
was
yeah,
like a sign up. Two kids from this U18
yeah,
signed up to listen to this guy talk about what they look for to be an NHL player at
yeah.
a CSSHL academy. I'm like that's a massive disconnect from where you
Oh
need to
yeah,
be,
yeah,
right?
for sure,
Like a
100%.
massive disconnect.
Yeah, and like, and yeah, and again, it it's that mindset, right? And everyone says they want to play in the NHL or they want to go to college to play hockey or whatever it is, but they aren't willing to do every little thing it takes. And
Yeah.
those, yeah, I don't have an answer. I don't get it. For me, it's like any opportunity you have, you're there and you make the most of it. And especially when you're in those academies when your parents are some families are remortgaging homes to do this, and it's like, if I'm a kid doing that, man, like it's such a privilege. And sometimes I have found you got to remind them of how lucky they are to
Yeah.
be able to do what they're doing every day, and to not even the hockey, they're training every day and learning, and the nutrition stuff they learn, and the habits that, like, really, it's an environment that if you set a goal and really work your butt off to do it, you can accomplish anything. Whether it's, and like you said, whether it's about
Yeah.
playing hockey somewhere, or just coming out of there and being a good person and learning this is what it takes to have success in life, is there's value in that. But if it's a lot of money to waste
Yeah.
if you're not dialed into doing that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I love you touching on that. Gratitude's a big piece of what I train with the players. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that not only does it make you like, does you make your attitude better, make you a better teammate, it makes you all these other things, but it also makes you take advantage of what's in front of you, right? Like it's
Yeah.
such a that's another skill I think that is, when you talk about it enough, it's super beneficial, to train
Oh yeah.
gratitude. As crazy as
Yeah.
that sounds for some people, but I think you actually can train it a little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah, so I just had the one thing I wanted to ask you, and it's more of a
Yeah.
personal one. And when
Yeah.
I got into like doing the podcast, this maybe we can relate, maybe we can't. It was like, who the
Yeah.
hell would want to listen to me? Like whatever, right? You have this kind of
Yeah.
complex, let's say, imposter syndrome almost.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't mean to project this on you, but
Yeah.
going to like an NHL environment and like in working with
Yeah.
these guys, right, that are the best in the world, and everyone has their process and their journey. Like, how did you, or did you have any issue of like, holy shit, like I'm on the ice with these guys,
Oh,
like, or what can I teach,
oh,
whoever,
100%, man. It's like, well, the first thing is I never played in the NHL, right? And played low level pro in Germany. So, but I think that's where I came back to what I believe in. And it's like, I'm just going to present what I believe, and relate it to the players. And I and so yeah, I get, like, for example, the first time I went on the ice with the Scene Twins, I was like, okay, what am I going to teach these guys? Like, honestly. Um, so, and that wasn't my focus of how I ended up working, but um, it was very much so communicate with them, talk, and they're great guys, super open guys, and we're always willing to talk about hockey. So it was like, okay, I sat down with them. It's like, what would you guys want to work on? Kind of, what do you guys see? And then I'd kind of build a bit of a program and say, okay, well, here's what I'm thinking when we're on the ice. We'll work on this. So I gave them kind of their input into it
yeah,
and showed them that what I was thinking and why. So they knew when we were going on the ice what we were focused on and working on. And if you can make these guys feel like what you're doing is going to benefit them, they're all in, man. They'll go on the ice. So that was the first time with the Twins, and then a guy like Ryan Kessler and BX and those guys. It was just more of that, a lot of communication and explaining what I saw, what I thought, taking their feedback, and it's like, okay, show them video. And it's like, here's what I think we need to work on. Here's how I'm going to do it. Let's go do those drills. And so they knew the drills. It wasn't just random, let's go out and like stick handle around stuff. It was like very focused on their game and individual. And that, as you know, like you get to that level, you don't get that individual stuff, right? Like it's a team practice typically. And, I give props to Mike Gillis, who was the GM when I got there, and Elaine Vino. It was very much, okay, well, we have goalie coaches working with them every day individually. Why don't we have someone working on our players on their skills individually and to score goals individually? Um, and that was kind of their mindset. And I remember when I got there in September for my first full season with the Canucks, and I was like, okay, we had a meeting with Vino. I was like, okay, so how do you want me to set this up? He's like, I don't know. You're the skills coach. You do it. If you're screwing up, that wasn't the word he used, I'll let you know. And I was like, okay. So I really had to like think of a process, because like you said, I did feel that way. It's like, what do I have to teach them? But when I could take their feedback, explain to them what I'm thinking, show them why, and then come up with drills that are really relevant for them, they were all in.
right,
And that, I think, is again, there was times when I'd question. I was like, just all I can do is the best that I can do. And if it's not going to work or those guys don't like it, then it's not the end of the world, right? Like there's just, I'll move on. But
Yeah.
um, so I think that was one of the biggest challenges is to, and I remember even like after the summers of all the guys I had, they'd come back from their NHL teams. It's like early on, I was like, oh man, like I got to come up with the best drills and the best things. And it's like I learned real quick. No, you don't. Just have a reason for what you're doing. And I remember all like Scott Arneal. He was the head coach of the Moose too, and I was going back and I remember him saying to me, "It's like Glenny, like anyone can run a drill. You have to actually teach the skill if you want to set yourself up as a skills coach." And that always resonated with me. Like I can't just run a drill, right? You have
Yeah.
to. There has to be teaching to it. There has to be a purpose to it. And the expertise I have is that ability to pick three things that I want to see in a drill and then hammer that home. It's like if that's not there, we're stopping the drill and we're doing it till you get it. There might be other things that are missing, but we're going to worry about that later.
Yeah.
And so, I was so lucky to work with such great people that I kind of soaked it in and just kind of built my way. And again, it's like, I think myself out doing podcasts. And it's funny you say that because I'm like, man, who's going to want to listen to what I have to say? Because you kind of like the skills coach and that you're kind of like out of the scenes, behind the scenes, right? Like,
Mhm.
you're kind of working with the guys every day, but it's the head coaches and the assistant coaches that are the ones there. But you're in there with the guys on an individual level.
Yeah.
And so I learned a ton from the Sedin twins, Kesslers, like even, goalie coaches. I got to work with Roy Melanson and Dan Kluche and Ian Clark. And it's like, okay, what do you guys see? What are the goalies looking at? And, build drills with them. So just taking it all in and
I love it.
learning was the biggest thing. And, and never thinking I knew it all.
Yeah.
It's like there's other ways and they're just as good. I just happen to do things this way. And I always tell, kids like if this doesn't fit with what you want or how you see things, then I'm probably not the right guy to work with.
Yeah.
I'm
And that's
okay
okay.
saying that. And that's
Yeah.
fine.
And
And
that's
it's like,
okay.
hey, you're still a great guy. I don't
Yeah.
I don't hold against you. And it's like, even you're recruiting for your hockey team. It's like, well, for whatever reason, the family that's a better fit. Hey, I all the best to you, man. You got to make whatever decision is best for your family and that individual hockey player. And I don't know, just I just want players to develop and have the most success they have wherever that is. And if I can be a part of that, great.
Yeah.
You know,
The
so
It sounds like I mean, it's the building the trust aspect, right? I think,
it's
especially at
huge.
that NHL level, right? And it sounds like that your approach was the way you built trust. You know what I mean? That they
Yeah,
were involved in the process. You took what they wanted and you built it into a plan. They had
yeah,
input on it, and then you go out and execute. And then it sounds like, and I was going to ask you that, and you answered what your expertise was, and you kind of answered the question how I thought maybe you might. Like
yeah,
we there's such this emphasis on the drill, and I mean, and coaches even minor hockey level. Well, give me some drills, okay? Well, I can give you drills, right?
yeah.
Like,
It's no
and
problem.
maybe they're good drills or they're not great drills, but it's like, what's happening inside of that time, or what are you picking out of that drill to help this player be better, right? And it sounds
Right.
like maybe that's like your secret sauce and your special gift is to be able to see what that player is doing, to be able to recognize that potentially it's incorrect or there's an alteration that can help them, and then you
Yeah.
help them apply that.
Yeah. 100%. And yeah, and that to me, that's the art of it. That's the beauty of it. And it's like you could have a great drill, but if it's not run right and the details and the habits aren't there in that drill, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Right. Like so, and that's something I learned again from like Taves and I. We would, like I said, we would we had that relationship where if he didn't like something, he told me.
Right.
I was like, we would argue about things, which was great. And I
Yeah.
always remember again, I think it was when he came back from winning a Stanley Cup, and I was like, oh man, like this is legit now. Like I need to have great drills. And I remember putting all this complex skills in it, and he couldn't quite get it. And he was getting all pissed off and mad at me. And I was like, why is he getting mad at me? He can't do the drill. But then he said something. He's like, "Well, that's really game ready." And I was like, went home that night. And I was like, "What? Like that was a great drill. It's like not my fault. It didn't go well." And I was like, "Well, yeah, it was my fault because I didn't teach the different aspects of that skill we were working on." So I
Yeah.
just threw him a drill that had everything in it. It's like, "Hey, go do it." And it's
Yeah.
like, well, no, there's a step to it. There's a step and there's a progression. And so again, like I learned from these players. And it's like, yeah, man, you gotta build those progressions. And it's like, so like a catch and shoot we worked on one summer is like we spent hours just working on him catching a pass in the right spot. And it's like that's
Yeah.
that's what he wanted to do. And that's what those great players will do. Just
Yeah.
his hands in the right spot and his footwork. That was it. Not even shooting it.
Yeah. What
And
a
then
great lesson.
we built on it and built on it. And so that's yeah, that's kind of the beauty of it, the part I love about it. So
Take one more short break from the podcast here just to remind you about the Peak Potential Hockey Project, which is the signature mindset training program that Up My Hockey offers. It's been in circulation now for over 3 years, with over 500 graduates and with some real breakthrough type stories. The more you want to listen, the more you have your ear to the ground. You don't have to go very far to hear how mindset development and mindset support is one of the biggest difference makers for players at the highest level, let alone junior athletes or minor pro athletes or youth athletes. This is being recognized as the fundamental piece that is almost always being missed. Now, if you can find a proven program with somebody who has shown to get results before, this is, in my mind, a no-brainer. Again, I'm all about supporting what I have here as far as services and products, but it's not just about what I have. You are on the Up My Hockey podcast right now, so you have listened to me at some point in some context. If you think what we discuss on this program here would be beneficial to your athlete, or if you are an athlete listening, if this is something that you haven't explored before, you need to get involved. Whether it is with me and whether it is with my program, that is not my biggest concern. My biggest concern is that you recognize the value in training your mindset and getting involved in your personal development. Hockey is much bigger than just the skills you use on the ice. We have to think about recovery from mistakes. We have to think about the mindset around growth and development. We have to think about our communication skills when it comes to dealing with our teammates or with our coaches. We have to think outside the box when it comes to how can we maximize our practice and what that involves when it comes to what goes on between our ears. There are so many facets of mindset that I couldn't even explain them all here. And for each player, there's going to be different ebbs and there's going to be different highs, like things that you're going to need to focus on, things that are maybe blind spots for you that you didn't even know existed. Now, if we can take away those blind spots, if we can give you ways to train with some tools, we can shift your perspectives and your belief system around some of these things. That is the biggest opportunity for growth, period. And a discussion. What you don't know, you don't know. So if you have not been involved in it, you need to get involved in it. You need to get curious about it, especially if you have big goals and dreams. Because building a team and taking your holistic development as an athlete is crucial if you want to try and do your best. And when you walk away from the game, at whatever point that be, whether that be an NHL Hall of Fame career or whether that be 5 games as a junior player, you want to be able to say, I went all in. I went all in. I got the most out of me that I could. Regrets stink, right? You don't want to have those regrets. You want to do what you can. You want to play a big game, and mindset development and looking at that aspect of your training is super important. So the Peak Potential Hockey Project, that's a way to get in to work with me. That is my foundational kind of 101 piece. It's a 4-week program. Once you graduate that, you're going to be off to the races. There's so many changes that players see within 4 weeks. Parents coming up to other parents at arenas. What happened to your son? What happened to your daughter? What are they doing? Again, these you do not change hockey skills in 4 weeks. You can't change them to that significantly that somebody would come over and say, what happened? But if you change the way the operating system works, you can see growth like that. That is measurable, tangible, visual. And once you take this 4-week program, then you have the option to work with me either in a group setting, then you have the option to work with me either in a private setting as a one-on-one client, and the game changes. So by all means, I offer these guided missions, which is small group programs. I launch them not on a regular basis, probably every 4 to 6 weeks. The next one comes up here on April 1st. I think it's a great time of year. Most people are just winding down their season. If you're a youth hockey player, if you are a junior player, you're getting into playoffs. What an advantage to have a little bit extra in the tank here to get you through the biggest time of year. And if you're already done hockey wherever you're at, then this is a great time to start building for this coming season, for the tryout season, for the fall, getting these habits and these concepts down and in place and in a spot where you can practice them without the stress of games and tournaments. Can be a great time for players to do that. So, by all means, check the website for that. The Peak Potential Hockey Project. You can take that either by yourself, like I said, a solo mission. You can take it as a guided mission, which is a small group, or you can take it with me on a one-on-one mentorship version, which is called the Mentored Mission. Those are all available on the website and breaks down everything that the program offers. And again, whether it's my program or whether it's somebody else's, if you are somebody who takes hockey seriously and you want to get more out of the game, more out of yourself, have a better time while you're doing it, and potentially even make an impact on others with your example of leadership, then this is something that you should look for. Let's get back to the conversation with Glenn Carnegie. By the way, I played for the Moose, so you keep like Scott O'Neill was there when I was there,
I know.
and
I think I just missed you.
yeah, we did just dismiss each other.
Yeah.
Randy Carlisle was the head coach at the time. Anyways, what a great, I mean, they were so professional. Like they were the IHL at the time when I was there, and they were, I don't know if they were affiliated with Vancouver at the time. I can't remember. No, but anyways, it was a great experience. I loved Winnipeg. I thought it was fantastic. But anyways, when I was done relatively early. I retired at 30. And so when I came back to play just pickup or men's league or whatever you want to call it, I say this humbly, but I was a bit too good for, you know what I mean, for what was going on here to have any fun with it. So I was like, you know what? Like, I've always really liked goalie. I'm going to be a goalie. So like I bought all the goalie gear, right?
Really?
And so now I'm out there in men's league, and, you know, and obviously I can try as hard as I want, which is important to me, you know, and nobody's getting mad at me because I'm floundering around out there and doing all this other stuff. But what I found, and why I'm telling you the story, is because I was a goal scorer. And now I'm being a goalie. And now being a goalie, I understood what was really hard, right? Like how the release can be different, or like moving side to side, or whatever these things were. And I'm like, oh my God, like if I would have known this before, you know, like how much maybe I get 5 extra a year, you know, or whatever, right? Which in the right league is like millions of dollars, you know. And
it is.
So you talking with the goalie coach, like of course we should be talking with the goalie coach, because what is 100%. Difficult? How can we bring that into the game, right?
Yeah, and like I remember I was really blessed. I had Roberto Luongo, Ryan Miller. Like Ryan Miller, he could tell you like every shooter what their lie is, what their curve's like, what their pattern is. Like so I would put together like the shootouts before the game, and he always wanted to go over them, and we watch, and I'd be like, well, why? Like sometimes a move looks so easy. Like what was it that he did that goalie bid on? And just to hear their perspective it was like it was just like a subtle thing, and he was so like dialed into that, like it was amazing. And then, you know, and working with Roberto Luongo, like, and I had Alex Burrows on the ice, like all those guys did. Alex Burrows played rebound, would hunt pucks, rebound. Lou would they competed in battle, and I was like, holy man, like this is unbelievable. And then even like the first kind of skill sessions I did with, I wouldn't put Luongo out because we were doing some like backdoor stuff, and he was like, he came up to me, he was like, "Why aren't you putting me out on the skill sessions?" I'm like, "Well, you're not going to want to do this." My experience earlier was like goalies would always get pissed off
Yeah.
because if you're they don't want to do it. And he was like, "Well, I'm going to go out and work on what I need, so it's fine." And I was like, "Okay." So all he'd be like, "I'm trying to be as big as I can getting across the ice," and I was just like, "Man, like that's the mindset." Like that, it was like, I don't care. I'm gonna go work on something. I know I'm gonna get scored on, but you see so many goalies like, "Oh, this drill's stupid," or "What do we do? What am I doing this for?" It's like,
Right.
I was like, well, Luongo did all the time, man, and he did pretty good. So, yeah,
He was okay.
talking with the goalies really, really changes your perspective.
Yeah. The funny story you'll probably well, I assume you'll find funny. I played with him in Lowell, and
Yeah,
we had a ping pong table in the room, and
yeah,
we always had the big ping pong tournaments. And I was an okay ping pong player, and
yeah.
he was quite good too. Often we were in the finals, and that guy was, of course, all defense, right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
those
yeah. And
long arms, he would just
lanky.
hit
Yeah,
everything just back to me, and I'd be trying to smash it. And oh my god, I totally remember those days of Lou
yeah.
just being the eternal backboard.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. It's
Rightfully
might as
so.
well flip the board up, eh, and play
Yeah,
yourself. But
what a
yeah,
great
but
guy
again,
too.
oh,
Um,
he's beauty.
when it comes to, and I'm sure people are curious out there, but when you're a skills coach for an NHL team, and you've kind, it seems like you've sort of outlined it, but you had like individual plans for most
Yeah.
players. Would there actually be a skills practice where everyone was on the ice together doing a skills thing, or would these guys come to you and say, "Hey, I want to work on XYZ," and then you'd find some extra time for them as well? How would
Yeah,
that season look?
it was both. I mean, when I first and I was with 4 different coaching staff, so it kinda changed each time. Um, but with Vino, it was like, okay, he wanted a development plan for the team. So we had rapid shot at the time too. So I had a schedule and I would have 6 players. 3 would be doing like green biscuit stick handling in the concourse of Rogers Arena, and 3 guys were shooting pucks. I would flip it. They were done, and then I would take 6 guys, usually like, you know, uh, like I would take the first and second line out that day, and then the next day would be like the third and fourth line, and the other guys doing this. So I had a plan like that. Um, as it progressed, and then when Willie Desjardins was there, we turned it to more focus. So we started bringing in a lot of the young guys. So like I had like Bo Horvat, Bertanen, and Sven Barchi was in that group, and so I just more focused on the young guys. So I would take them out pretty much, a couple of times a week before practice for about 20-25 minutes and work on their individual skills. And then I started doing more video with them as well, like doing game analysis. And it was different from when they would see the other coaches because other coaches are a little bit more systems wise and all that. So they actually would start coming to me because they wanted to see like the skill aspects of it. And it and then what I would also do is with the young guys like, hey, like who do you like with Bo Horvat? I thought right away he was very similar to Taves in the sense that he was super strong, like good in puck battles, he's a workhorse, you know.
Mhm.
Um, so kind of put a plan together for him with the skating, with different puck battles, with different puck protection, finding seams. Like with Bo, he was very good winning puck battles, but he wouldn't always see that seam right away. So he wasn't creating the offense that he wanted to. So we just looked at his ozone play, and I would kind of see, okay, these 5 games, you had a total of this many puck touches in the ozone. And then and sorry, it's a long answer, but I kind of developed a way I would try and make it more objective. And I would say, like, okay, that's a positive possession. That was a negative possession. And I would set up, he knew that which was which as well.
Yeah.
And so basically, like, let's say he had 50 in the first 5 games we did, he only had 10 positive puck touches. Well, my focus for him became, okay, let's work on increasing your positive puck touches in the ozone. Not worry about points, not worry about anything else. And then it was like he's like, I had a bunch that night, right? Like he'd be excited about that. And it wasn't about points. It became his habits and his details in the ozone. And once we start doing that, then it's like, okay, and I would show him, here's your negative ones. So this is what we're going to go work on. And now he would see why. And it goes back to the earlier question of getting their buy-in in that.
Right.
But so again, for a long answer, it was, I did individual stuff. Sometimes with different coaches, I would do a lot of the game day skates as well. We'd just
Oh,
do
okay.
like skill stuff.
Yeah.
And then they became a lot more optional. So I'd have 12 guys and we'd do more like, skill hand stuff, getting reps of shooting. With Vino early on as well, we would do a full 45 minutes where it'd be like just a skills practice. Other days it'd be, okay, you're going to take the D's for an hour and then you're going to take the forwards for an hour. So again, it was, I
Depends on
think
who.
it depends on who. And then it was really like certain coaches might come in and say, like that morning, just say, okay, Glenn, you're going to go run the skills today.
Right.
I was like, okay, so I got 5 minutes to prepare then. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So it was a lot of that. And, you just kind of had to adapt and be ready. And it's like,
Even in that environment, I would assume, well, one, some guys have a higher, want or desire,
yeah,
to do that stuff, and some guys are probably more drawn to you than others. So, like,
yeah,
is that kind of how it went? Like some guys you'd be working more with, not necessarily because you're seeking them out, but just because they were seeking you out. And then
yeah.
the other part of that question I'm going to say is like when it comes to um some of the younger players, like would you get assignments like I want him to work on, or I want you to work on this with X player?
Yeah, for sure. And it was kind of like, from the coaches and me, we'd talk about it, right? And like, what do we think he needs to work on? And and especially when I went down to the American League team. So there was probably more like 6 or 8 guys I'd be focused on. And it was, and I did all the video with those guys and the coaches as well. And it's like, okay, what is his individual plan? What are you working on him daily? So when I'm not here, you still have to continue with what our plan is for him, right? So
Yeah.
again, and I talk about it all the time now, like you could bring in the best power skater in the world to work with a group of kids for an hour, but they're not going to get anything out of that unless what he's teaching is continually taught
Todd.
again and worked
Yeah.
on. So, you know, it, I think it's so important to teach the coaches so they can see these things with skating, right?
Right.
And they can keep continually building off what you do when you're there as a skills coach. And
Yeah.
so it's more than like anyone can again go in and run an hour and make it a good skate and that, but it's if you're truly developing, what are they doing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday when that skills coach isn't there? Because if it's
Yeah.
just once,
Amen. Amen. And it's not even,
yeah,
and that's the part where the buy-in for the players, like, you say that to whoever. I mean, it could be junior guys, right? It could be the
yeah,
14-year-olds. Like when I've just finished breaking down the crossover for you, right? And you're
yeah,
getting to those positions. If you don't do this again till the next time you see me,
yeah,
like you're not much better. But if you go and now delivers to your practice, or you find a little bit extra ice and you remember the key points that I'm trying to emphasize, like
yes,
that's the difference maker, right? That's the
100%.
difference maker.
Yeah.
Um, is that a difference? Is that a difference that you see from the NHL level players to, let's say, you're working with the WHL right now, the
Mhm.
best teenage players in Western Canada? What's the difference in that from a skill set and a mindset basis that you see?
Yeah, well, again, it goes back to what I said. Like, I can go in with, let's say, the Rockets, and there's some guys who are going to do the easy edge work drills, and they're going to take. So when I'm doing it, I'll set it up so my edge work stuff is a warm up for what I'm going to be doing later. So if it's going to be like delays and turns, well, I want to put them in situations where they're, getting their shoulders in the right spot. They're not leaned over their center of gravity in a turn. So, and you'll see it. So the guys are dialed in. And when we do it live, they can make those turns and make plays where the other guys are blowing edges. And so it's
Yeah,
like, that's where you see it real quick. And again,
yeah.
those guys now who are focused on those easy drills or what they think they're too good for, that's mastering the fundamentals. And when you do that, everything else again gets easier. So it
So
all
NHL
comes.
guys, are you saying NHL guys are generally better at that as a whole? Like
Yeah.
they have a better approach than a junior guy would?
Yeah, and obviously there's
Yeah.
always outliers, right? Like
Yep.
but for the most part, yeah, it's like they are willing to put in that time on the fundamentals. They'll do what other guys won't do, and often that's the boring stuff.
Yeah.
And I guess another point is like being very self-aware of actually how good you are, and not being
Or
like,
aren't.
well, right. It's like, I'm too good. I don't need to do this. Well, yeah, you do. Like, there's not too many guys in the world that don't need to work on the fundamentals constantly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
another thing, like, and sorry, I could go on about. I love talking about this stuff. It's like, we're working with athletes predominantly here in Kelowna. It's a pretty small, or Vernon. It's a pretty small bubble in the world, right? Like, you might be really good here playing on your team, but guess what? There's people all over the world, more and
Yeah.
more now working on their game and developing. So it's being very self-aware, and and I think even for parents, like, don't be in such a rush.
Yeah.
Understand like where your kids are at, and you know help them work on those fundamentals more than putting them in situations that they shouldn't be in, that they're not ready for.
You mentioned the green biscuits. I got little notes all over my page here. So
Yeah.
and me connecting the dots of like stick handling with your head up. This is I would guess in a teenage brain, this would be a mundane, maybe not fun thing.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it could be fun. Like that's one of the things I talk to guys
Yeah.
about. Like there's ways to make
There's
this
for
hopefully
sure.
enjoyable. I would think.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But is that like you're saying NHL guys are in the hallway, you have working on green biscuits. Like
Yeah,
this
man.
should be like a
Right.
really big aha moment for the casual 14-year-old, right? That still is looking at the
100%.
down. Like what kind of stuff would you have an NHL guy doing in the
Well,
concourse with a green biscuit?
well, Ryan Kessler, we did like, he sought me out, like, even right before games. We did stuff in the concourse of the arena while guys were playing soccer. He was doing stick handling. We would do like we would play a game where it's like flipping pucks and knocking it down, and we've kind of made nets, and it was like getting points for stuff like that. But he worked on it. So even in the gym at Rogers Arena there, we put down some of those fake ice sheets, and then made like a nettings, and so guys could stick handle and all that stuff there. And
Mm,
again, it became a big part of that group. And then Kess was doing it, and then Bieksa came and did it, and then Yannick Hansen came and did it, and more and more guys started doing it. It was just, that was the expectation on our team, was like, we're going to work on our game every day, and whether it's on ice, off ice, video. And that's the beauty of what I think Elaine Vigneault was really good at, and the beauty of that team we had, where they all worked, man. Like Alex Burrows too, like,
yeah.
and Ryan Kessler, and that's what they would do. And it was basic, like fake shot, pull it back, pull it, have it on your forehand, out to your backhand, bringing your backhand, getting that top hand out in a shooting position, like. And it's often easier to work on that stuff off the ice because you're stationary and you're right there in front of him, giving him his little cues. We're
Yeah.
on the ice where he's going down the ice. It's a lot harder to give those little detailed teaching cues. But
And then it's the
yeah,
reps you need, right? Like those are
it's reps.
those
Yeah.
those are the reps, and being able to do that with your head up. Again, for some of the kids and just people listening, like one of the little things I suggest having a mirror on the wall in front of you,
Yep.
and you're
Yep.
making eye contact with yourself, and you're also trying to look around, just because it can be habitual to get your eyes go down, right? So it's like
Yeah.
having that eye contact with yourself, doing these things, whether it's a wide stick handle or a pullback,
Yep.
like it doesn't really matter what it is, but do it again and again and again. Like that's how you build the skill,
Yeah.
so it
And
becomes
you
automatic.
can add, like, you're right. You can add different stimulus to, I would have players kind of just, so, Kessler stick handling, and other players walking around to the side of him and like holding up their fingers. So he's calling out. And then we had like these stands that had numbers on it. So he had to be like 6, and he's looking, it was 5, whatever.
Yeah.
So adding different stuff like that and off ice is, for me, I think it's great. I think Ryan would say the same, that not only it helped his game, but he enjoyed doing it. It became part of his game day routine. And him and I work. He worked on his game, man. He was a guy that if I didn't put him out on the ice, he was like, why aren't I going out? Like, why you don't want to work with me? Like,
Right.
I was like, and then he just would come out. He's like, no, I'm working on my game. And that guy, man, they're workhorses. And
Yeah.
Alex Burrows, same way. And that's what made that team so fun to work with. And they had a lot of success.
That's so great, and I try and tell like the younger guys, and I think it's good for them to hear. You know, Stacey Roos came out. He's a local guy here. I'm sure,
Yeah.
obviously, you know
Yep.
him, and he'll come out and help out in some skill development stuff here. And he did a couple things with my team, and he did this, you know, relatively basic fundamentals, stick handling, progressions, end to end, right lines. You know,
Yep. Yeah.
nothing out of the ordinary. But he
Yeah.
ended up telling them at the end of the session, he's like, Kucherov does this for 10, 15 minutes before every practice.
Yeah.
And it was stuff that, like, you know, a rep 12-year-old, I know some of the guys were like, oh, okay, yeah, head up and sculling, you know, stick handling, you
Yeah.
know, same thing that the WHL guy will be like, oh, I see 12-year-olds do this. This is so stupid, right? It's like,
Yep.
no, it's not stupid. Like, this is like
100%.
the best in the world does this on a daily basis so he can still get better or stay sharp, however you want to put it.
Yep.
And I think that's the message that doesn't get old. And I don't think that these kids can hear enough is that that's
Yeah.
what's happening. That's how they stay
And
relevant. That's how they
100%. The guys,
improve.
like even you see in Detroit, like Datsuk and Zetterberg, they used to play like one-on-one keep away every day. And guys even, oh, what was his name now for Detroit? That was so good at deflections and net
Holmstrom.
front. Yeah, Holmstrom.
Holmstrom.
Like you would see him in practice or game day skates when they're in van, and literally he's there. Boom, 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 like hundreds of shots.
Yeah.
And they do that every day. And again, and also part of my job, a lot of it wasn't always teaching. Sometimes it was just providing reps.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, yeah, it's
Being the
yeah,
guy to shoot the puck, right?
yeah. Or,
Yeah.
you know, if they want to work at one timers, I'm going out and giving them not bad passes.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. So yeah, it's just, and I always like JT Miller always said, if you give him, because especially early on, you're out there, you give a guy a bad pass and they're on you a little bit, and you start overthinking those passes a lot. But I always remember JT Miller one day. I was like, sorry about those passes, man. He goes, Glenny, I get paid a lot of money to catch your shitty passes. So it's like, I was just like, yeah, you're right, man. I'm not gonna worry about my passes. But just the way you said it too, I was like,
Yeah.
and too bad he wasn't there earlier in my career. But like,
Right.
you know, it was just, yeah. But it's so true. It's like, don't worry about it, man. I got it.
Yeah. What a great mindset again, right?
Yeah,
That's one of the best lines I ever heard. I can't remember who said it, but earlier in my career, a guy said, you can't give a good player a bad pass.
that's right. Yeah, it's classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
Classic. Oh, that's a good one to end on. I think really appreciate it. We could probably shoot the shit here all day.
Yeah,
I
for
love
sure.
chatting hockey, and especially somebody that's been around it as long as you have. And
Yeah,
yeah, man, and testament to you too. Obviously, what you were doing there in Vancouver, just to go through 4 coaching regimes and
yeah,
GMs and everything else. There's obviously must have been something that you were doing right there.
yeah.
So even
There's something.
yeah, there's something, which is awesome
Yeah,
because I love the story too, the Genesis story. You know, like
yeah,
I think there's a great message there to everyone else out there too, right? It's not necessarily where you're starting from, but it's just your dedication
no,
to it and your willingness to get
yeah.
better at it.
And I
Right?
think there's a great book too, Robin Sharma. It's Lead by Example, or no, leaders have no title, or something. I read it back in those days, but it was basically all about, doesn't matter where you are in life or whatever, it's be the best you can be, and you know, it's going to lead to good things. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And good. And it's led to good things, and you're helping kids now. It's come full circle, and great to have you
yeah,
in the Okanagan. And thanks
yes,
for sharing all your wisdom here with my audience. So really appreciate
yeah.
your time
It
today,
was a lot
Glenn.
of fun. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for sticking around for the entire episode. I'm sure it wasn't very hard. He was a great guest. Glenn, thank you for being here. If you happen to be listening to this, we will chat again soon, I am sure. Wish you nothing but the best. It's great when we have good people in the Okanagan Valley. There are a lot of options. There are a lot of good people here to support, and it's no surprise that there are so many NHL athletes that decide to spend summer in the Okanagan Valley. Because there are good trainers here. This is a great climate. There are great access to services, and there's all a bunch of great hockey players to be training with. So love the fact that Glenn's here and building that building that repertoire of great service providers here in the Okanagan Valley. And no matter where you are at, I think it is important to seek out the best team that you can, whether that be your physical skill set, whether that be your mental skill set, whether that be off-ice training in the gym. You need to take your team seriously. That is one thing. The more that I'm in this business, the more that I work with elite players, the more that I talk and listen to elite players, they have a support group. They have somebody to help them get better. High performance is about that mentality, about how do I squeeze the lemon, which is me, and get all the juice out of this. You are not an expert on everything about high performance. We try to make you an expert on you. That's one thing I talk about, is building your personal operating manual. How do you get the most out of you, and how do you make yourself tick? That is something that a lot of people have blind spots about. That is something that we're not apt to do naturally. So figure yourself out. Get someone on your team that's going to help you figure yourself out, that's going to support you with your goals and with your dreams. Get good skill guys around you. Get good guys in the gym around you. This all doesn't have to be done through money either. I know maybe parents listening right now is like, oh, that's money, that's $, that's $. With social media now, there are so many good people that you could follow, that you could be a student of, that is completely cost-free, that you can apply on your own. And sometimes I find the people that are curious enough, that do have the passion about their own development, sometimes that is the athlete that absolutely blossoms the most, because they aren't having their hand held everywhere they go. They are taking complete ownership of their own development. They are sourcing out people that make sense for them, and they're applying stuff in their own garages and in their own basements and on their own track program without somebody there yelling at them and telling them to be there. It's not necessarily about doing the absolute perfect program designed ideally for you. A lot of it is just about the application and willing to go out and execute. So don't overthink your development, but definitely build the team of experts around you, whether that be somebody that you work with privately that you're actually paying money for, or whether that be somebody on social media or on YouTube or wherever the heck you're going to look, that you're going to find and say, okay, this makes sense to me and I'm going to use this for me. This is what I need. Lots of ways to go about your development, but at the end of the day, you are the owners of it. So take it seriously, have fun while you're doing it, and until next time, play hard and keep your head up.